Well, man, thank you so much for coming, first of all. I really appreciate it. I know a lot of people in the audience are looking forward to this. There's a lot of female entrepreneurs, female advisors and business owners in the room as well who are particularly excited. So I want to break this interview down into 4 stages. Yep. I want to talk about the early days, so maybe it's your first business, how that kind of went, the pros and cons, the lessons, the good bits, the bad bits. Then the exciting bit, the Dragon's Den bit, the building multiple companies, multiple exits, a little bit about what we're doing now, what businesses you're involved in now, and then we'll maybe extract and pluck out some lessons towards the end of that. So let's start off with, how did it start for Sarah Willingham?
So I wasn't brought up around entrepreneurs or people who had their own business. My dad worked for Wedgwood in Stoke and my mum was a maths teacher. But I was always really curious about business. I didn't realise that was the thing that I was curious about, but I was always really fascinated how we gravitated towards the same brands, bought the same stuff, wore the same trainers. How was that? And ultimately, I also really wanted to travel. And my dad wouldn't let me have a gap year because he said, "Our Sarah, if you go and have a gap year, you'll never come back," which might have been true. But so when I left uni, I did business at university and actually found the thing that I was really interested in. Okay. I loved consumer-facing stuff. I loved talking to the customer, understanding the customer, and learning how to talk to the customer to get them to buy from you or to use you ultimately. But in my 20s, I wanted to travel and I found my thing in hospitality and I was at Pizza Express and opened restaurants all over the world. I ran the international department and I had no intention at this point of going on my own because actually I was learning and I loved it and I loved what I was doing. I loved learning and it seemed like every single day was a school day. And then as I got towards the end of my 20s, I'm sort of fast forwarding quite a lot now to how did I end up starting on my own. I'd realised that international development was not, I couldn't continue to live out of a suitcase if I was going to have a family. And I really wanted to be a mum. It was really important to me. And I realised that actually I couldn't stay on the path that I was on. I was going to have to move and do something different. So I went to the board of Pizza Express and I said, look, I can't continue to do this. It's not really core business for you. I'm going to leave and do something different. And they said, why don't you stay and work for us? And this was for the board and do what they called special projects. And my dad always said they're the first people to get made redundant. He's probably right, but if the business is going well, you're actually in for a really good ride at the time because you do loads of really fun stuff. Anyway, during that year, I shared an office with the CEO and the managing director of Pizza Express. And this is at the time when Pizza Express were opening 40 restaurants a year. It was a floated business. It was doing really well. And growing up in the hospitality industry during my 20s, I'd looked at these people. They were the benchmark. They had the simple, replicable business model that everybody wanted to copy. And I'd really held them up on a pedestal and thought, these are the smartest people in the world. And I shared an office with them for a year. And during the course of that year, I just asked all the questions. And by the end of that year, I realised that actually I really understood what they did. I really got it. And that was when I thought to myself, if I want to have a family, I've got to control my own diary. I needed to make a bit of cash, actually, because that helped me with my freedom. And by the end of that year, I thought, I understand what you do. I understand why they used equity when they used it, why they used debt, how they expanded, what their return on investment model was. And I thought to myself, right, I'm going to go and do it myself. And
how old were you at that point?
I think 28.
28, okay.
Yeah, I no longer have the 30 under 30 title, but I did have it once, but you can't use it anymore. I'm way too old. It just doesn't have credibility when I get up on the stage. But yeah, so that was my deciding moment where something clicked in my head, and I realised that actually it was nowhere near as complicated as I thought it was, that I could just give this a go and do it myself. And so I looked around in the market and thought, what is it that we all love, but there's no real chain, you know, there's no real group? And that was Indian food. And I said, right, that's it. I'm going to have the largest chain of Indian restaurants in the UK. And that was what I went on and did.
So that was the goal.
That was the goal.
Point, the largest,
that's what I went on and did. Yeah. And that was the big moment. But what had happened during that period was that I'd kind of really simplified it in my head. And instead of it all seeming so complex and so complicated, I'd kind of broken it down and gone, actually, it's not that hard. And I think, Sarah, with a fair wind and surround yourself with great people and just keep asking questions, you've got this. And that was it. That was when I made the move to do it on my own. Love it.
So the curiosity from being young helped you because you were so curious to learn from the guys there that you learned everything ready for you
and
for yourself.
No question was ever a stupid question because I was just Sarah the Small from Stoke at the time, you know, like, and you can just ask as many questions as you want and everybody just answers them. And by the end of it, you're like, actually, you're not all that, nobody's that smart. Like, we're all as smart as each other, actually. We can work it out as long as you're open and ask the right questions of the right people.
Love it. It's like having a mentor, right? It's learning from others.
Totally.
You know, nobody's really self-made, are they?
I mean, I
just learn from others.
Constantly say to my team, you don't need to know the answer. You just need to know that there is a question that needs asking and you need to know who to phone. And life is about, I think, knowing who your phone a friend is in a time, knowing that this is a moment where actually I don't know the answer. I mean, we've just heard about a great way of using AI for that, actually, and I think I use AI for that a lot. Often it's a sense check, but I also still have, you know, a guy on my phone who's in as Yoda, who is brilliant. He always answers the question, but it's just about knowing that there is a question in the first place, I think. Being curious enough to realise this is a moment where I might get this wrong. I should sense check it.
Curiosity is a fantastic trait.
It is.
Completely great. Love it. So how old was that then? 28, did you say?
About 28, yes.
So let's talk about that journey. So 28, set up your first business. All of a sudden, Dragon's Den. Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, so that then did really well, and I grew that. Met my husband and started to have my children, and I had 4 kids in 4 years, so I had them really, really close together. Wow. And then that was a careful what you wish for moment as well, where I was like, I had 1,500 staff and just about to have my 3rd. Actually, I was pregnant with my 3rd baby.
So you were still running the companies during
Still
this
running
time?
all the companies.
Yeah. Wow.
But you see, when you've got one baby, they're really portable, right? Because you just put them in a papoose and off you go. But the challenge came when I then had another one, and so I could take my second everywhere with me, but my first was like a toddler, and she was no longer portable. And then, of course, as you start, I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. I don't have enough hands. It's just not possible. So I ended up selling the Bombay Bicycle Club before I had number 3. So I just had 2 at the time when I sold. And then realised that, again, to be in control of my own diary, I didn't want to go back and, I mean, I was unemployable by that point, I think. You can't. So I started investing. Okay. And that worked really, really well, actually. I'd made some money from the Bombay Bicycle Club, and I started doing lots of different investments in different sectors where I was quite an active investor, so I could actually work with entrepreneurs, but nobody else was reliant on me getting up in the morning other than my own family. And that really moved the needle for me, sort of personally.